Lay an Open Rose Garden, an Adrienette Hanahaki Alternate Universe Sequel Series Fanfiction, Chapter 8. Alia and Nino were quietly talking over the movie playing on the TV when Adrien got back to his home. They gave him a small smile, knowing that he was even too tired to really talk to them. Adrien forced himself to trudge up to his room. He was tired, but not in the way where he wanted to sleep. He was more tired of everything that was happening. He sat down on the bed, in the darkness and the silence, because he hadn't even turned on the lights. Sighing, he fell down and faced the ceiling. Adrien could still feel the ghost of Marinette's hand in his. He didn't want to let it go, even as he left her room in the hospital. In all honesty, he was afraid. He was afraid to let it go. He was afraid that it would be the last time she would ever hold his hand back. All he wanted to do was stay at her bedside and talk to her and see her breathe. Anything that meant she was alive. Being here in his home meant that he was totally in the dark about everything that was happening right now. Adrien rolled over on his stomach, feeling immensely guilty about everything. As much as Marinette tried, she couldn't stop the self-hatred that was buried in him. It was his fault. It was all his fault that she was about to die, and everyone's lives were about to take a 180 because he was so stupid and blind and oblivious and didn't realize what was happening right in front of him. Eventually, they had to explain to Nino and her parents that Adrien was the one that Marinette had fallen in love with. It was a very awkward situation for the both of them. It was quite literally the opposite of announcing a relationship out of the blue. Thank the stars that her parents didn't hate him. He had honestly expected them to grow furious at him and never allow him around her again. Adrien really felt like he deserved that sort of treatment. Same with Nino and Alia. He thought that they would shun him away, but instead they were kind and understanding. Adrien felt like he was totally undeserving of all of the love and kindness around, especially Marinette's. Her love, kindness, and care. Her parents were sweet, and they welcomed him with open arms, saying that he had done nothing but good and that they weren't mad at him. Truthfully, when he was buried in that parental hug that he definitely didn't deserve, Adrien had cried. Whether it was because this was the first time he'd ever been hugged by two loving parents with words of comfort, or because he knew that he had ruined the best part of theirs and his life, he wasn't sure which one it was. Either way, he cried, and they were there to help him. Adrien squeezed his eyes tight, wishing that everything, all of it, would just go away. He wished that he could fix something, go back in time, never greet Marinette at that house party. He should have stayed he should have stayed away and stayed that an irritating boy that she never wanted to meet in the first place. That would have been better. They wouldn't be in this situation. No one would get hurt. But there was nothing he could do to fix everything now, no matter how much he wanted to. If Marinette is refusing to do the surgery, there will only be one other option for her to be cured. The person she's in love with falling in love with her back. A verbal communication of the love is key, as well as genuine feelings. A strong friendship, unfortunately, isn't enough to wither the flower. He could do something about it. He could save Marinette's life. Adrien shot up in his bed. If he was in love with Marinette, at least. That got the wheels turning in his mind. Now that was the important question. Was he in love with Marinette? The first thing that popped in his head was no. He was honestly so used to denying it, but he had to force himself to actually think about it. Think about it deep. Adrien normally wouldn't let himself down the wandering path, but right now, Marinette's life quite literally depended on it. He thought about it. what love was and romantic love and how it was different. Marinette said that being in love was a strange feeling of being alive. Nino said it was a feeling of being enough. How did he feel when he was around Marinette? Adrien pondered. It was easy for him to be around Marinette, in a way that felt more comfortable than anyone else. He'd known her for less than a year, and he felt more at peace with her by his side than even Nino. Lounging around on the couch, watching old high school movies late at night with Marinette cuddled up next to him under the blanket, something about it always seemed so blissful and perfect. Class with her was a little more fun and a bit better, brighter. Just talking to her at a coffee shop about small, idle, trivial things felt right. It felt so right. As if that was how his entire life was supposed to be like. Just being with her. Did that mean he was in love with Marinette? Adrien's heart began to beat faster and faster. To him, being with Marinette felt right, and it was as if they perfectly clicked together. He was in love with Marinette. I love Marinette. I love her a lot, Adrien whispered to the empty room. It somehow seemed a little bit brighter even without the lights. They were just so right. And a lot of other people could see it too. Adrien thought about that one time they'd gone out for a walk and Marinette saw some pretty flowers. So Adrien went over to pick them for her. He didn't want her getting mud all over her new dress. While plucking them, he ended up talking to an elderly, wise man. You are very much in love. I do miss those days of being young and youthful. Do not take it for granted. You will remember these days for the rest of your life. At the time, Adrien had laughed it off and shook his head, explaining that, no, we're actually just very good friends. She is a wonderful person, though. Her clothes would get dirty, but I know she likes these flowers. The man gave him a strange look that he now knew was skepticism. They looked in love because they were. He just didn't realize it. Even Kagami had picked up on how absolutely right he and Marinette were. She commented on their friendship after meeting her for the first time. You two are awfully close. How long has it been since you met her? A few months at best, she asked. Yeah, but, she's just my best friend, he said, back with a laugh. Kagami was a bit jealous, he knew that, but he didn't realize how correct she was. Not until now, at least. I have to save her life, Adrien muttered to himself, as if he had gone completely crazy. I have to. I can. His voice got louder. I love Marinette, and I'm going to go save her. Okay, now he was really sounding crazy. But he didn't care. It didn't matter. He was going to save her. Sane in the head or not? Probably not. With delirious mutters still leaving his mouth, Adrien tore out of his room and burst through the door, frantically grabbing things he needed to leave the house with. Alia and Nino stared at him in pure shock. Adrien, dude, are you okay? Nino asked. Adrien barely spared him a glance. Yeah, he said distractedly. I gotta go, but I'll be back. Bye. He slammed the door closed, crying out, see you later. Bolting down the stairs, he nearly ran into 3 people. Shouting apologies all the way to the subway, he gasped for breath. His heart was beating fast. He had to see Marinette now and save her life. No, you don't understand. I have to see her, Adrien cried at the poor secretary. Sir, The visiting hours are over, she said miserably. Inside, Adrien felt awful for shouting, but there was just too much adrenaline pumping through his veins to really pay attention. No, I know, but I have to see her. The woman in front of him sighs. Sir, I had to ask... Adrien? It's one of the nurses that he saw working with Marinette. You need to come see Marinette? He asked. Adrien nodded. Yes, I need to tell her, Adrien cried. At once the nurse understood and told the secretary that Adrien really did need to see Marinette. He followed the nurse and nearly ran into Marinette on the bed when running in. Marinette! He cried out. Thank God she was awake. Weak and tired, but awake. Marinette! She looked at him, confused. I thought the hours were over, she asked. I love you. Marinette was speechless. But the words didn't stop spilling from his mouth. I love you so much, and I had no idea. I can't believe it took this to make me realize that I'm so in love with you. Everything about us together, it's so right. I know being in love with you makes you feel so alive, but being in love makes me feel like everything is just right. It's the way it's supposed to be. Me and you. And when I realized I had to come see you and tell you, I couldn't wait. You can't wait. I think even without this flower, I'd be running to tell you anyways, but this is just a better reason for everyone else. I love you, Marinette, and I want you to be okay. Please. Adrien finally took in a breath, and Marinette smiled at him so brightly. Her eyes are watering, but she seemed less fragile already. Adrien, she said softly, pulling him in with her newfound strength. Adrien melted into her arms. I love you too. Adrien laughed a bit. I know, he said cheekily. Marinette rolled her eyes but smiled and knocked his head. And, she started, the pressure on my chest is gone. Adrien's face turned into a huge smile. He let out a sigh of relief. You saved my life, Marinette laughed. You're alive, he replied.